It's the morning of 1967 in Paris. A knock on a hotel room door awakens our girl, Elizabeth Harmon, who is sleeping in the bathtub. Her hotel is a mess, and she is running late for her highly anticipated chess match. Beth quickly swallows 2 green pills and hurriedly gets ready. She runs downstairs, and there she is, greeted by the press. Then, Beth walks over to a chessboard to begin the match. Here, the episode flashes back to when Beth is 9 years old. She stands at the scene of a car crash. Although she is unharmed, miraculously, her mother dies in the collision. After this incident, Beth is sent to a girls' orphanage. The head of the orphanage welcomes her in. She is given new clothes and a haircut there before being introduced to the other children. She learns that the orphanage dispenses pills to the girls daily, saying that these are the vitamins for the benefit of their body.
The green ones are the best.
What are they?
Vitamins.
Magic vitamins.
That night, Beth dreams about her parents. In her dream, her father, Paul, pleads to come inside the home, but her mother locks him out. They have an argument about something, and it extends so much that Paul has to leave after saying that this is the last time he comes for his family.
Once I drive away, I'm not coming back.
Back to the present, a teacher sends Beth to the basement to clean the class erasers.
Why don't you take the erasers down to the basement and clean them?
There, she sees the custodian, Mr. Shable, playing chess by himself. Beth is immediately intrigued by the game. Eventually, she starts demanding that Shable teach her how to play. Although he initially declines,
I don't play strangers.
Then Shable agrees when Beth reveals that she has learned how the pieces move on the board simply by observing his solo games. They both play a game together, and Shable quickly defeats her using a strategy called the Scholar's Mate.
What's called the Scholar's Mate.
That night, it's revealed that Beth is accumulating her green pills, which are not vitamins, but tranquility pills. She ingests multiple pills at once at night and can envision a chessboard on the ceiling of her dormitory. Through her visions, she can improve her strategy for the game. The following day, while playing a game with Shable, Beth immediately loses her queen. The custodian insists that she resign the game out of sportsmanship as she lost the queen so early.
You resign now.
At this, Beth gets angry and badmouths at the old guy. So Shable then locks her out of the basement. After a few days, Shable eventually lets Beth back in, and they begin playing the games daily. He teaches her chess strategies and the game's finer points, such as the names of each square on the board and opening moves like the Queen's Gambit.
The Queen's Gambit.
As she improves, Shable admits that she is astounding at chess.
You're astounding.
One day, Beth goes to the basement to find that Shable invited a man named Mr. Gans to watch her play. Gans is the head of a local chess club and also teaches chess at the local high school. However, Beth easily defeats him. After that, Beth beats Gans and Shable while simultaneously playing them on 2 boards. Seeing this, Gans gets permission from Deerdorf to bring Elizabeth to the high school chess club to play all 12 members at once.
He maintains that you are a phenomenal chess player.
Just then, the orphanage is reported for violating state law. The green pills are revealed to be tranquilizers, which are illegal to give to children. So, the orphanage stopped dispensing these pills to the children. But just before the big match of Beth, she is having withdrawal symptoms of tranquilizers. Recognizing this, a friend of Beth named Jolene smuggles Beth some tranquilizers just before her match at the chess club.
Can I talk to Beth?
Beth ends up beating all 12 boys in an hour and a half. There, she learns more about the chess games. Back at the orphanage, Beth breaks into the office where the green tranquilizers are kept, as clearly she is addicted to them now. She ingests a fistful of tranquilizers and stuffs her pockets with more. As she exits, the headmistress and the rest of the school catch Beth in the act.
Elizabeth.
Just then, Beth passes out and collapses in front of them under the effect of pills. Jumping forward in time, Beth is now a 15-year-old girl. One day, a couple comes to the orphanage looking to adopt a teenage girl. The headmistress introduces Beth to the couple, Alma and Alston Wheatley. To Beth's surprise, the Wheatleys adopt her. She arrives at her new home. Alston is largely dismissive of her. However, Alma is polite, but she is distant.
I bet you'd like to see your room.
After some days, Alston departs for a work trip, and Alma largely ignores Beth and sinks into drugs and drinking due to her depression. Beth is also not very welcome at school, and most of the other girls make fun of her for being smart. Things are made worse after Alma buys her ill-fitting, unfashionable clothing. Alma also refuses to buy Beth a chess set.
Another time, dear.
One day, Alma sends Beth to the local general store to fill a prescription for her. It turns out that Alma's subscription is for green tranquilizers. Seeing this, Beth immediately begins stealing Alma's pills and getting refills from the pharmacist for herself under Alma's prescription. she is again able to envision playing chess on the ceiling of her bedroom by using these pills. Beth also steals a chess magazine from a shop. She discovers that there are chess tournaments with cash prizes, including the multi-day state tournament taking place at a local high school. But the entry fee is $5, and Beth has nothing. Alma is also living a life hand-to-mouth. She tells Beth that they are having money troubles as Alston is sending a minimal amount of cash home. Beth offers to get a job, but Alma declines.
Maybe I could get a job.
A job?
I could work in a store.
So Beth writes to Shaybel to ask for the money and promises to pay him back double if she wins any money. After a few days, Shaybel sends the cash and Beth becomes happy as she now can get entry into the tournament. At the tournament, the registrars taunt Beth as she is entering the competition as an unranked competitor.
Are you sure you want to do this?
They say that Harry Beltic, who is the state champion, is also participating in the tournament and has a high ranking. However, Beth doesn't get worried about hearing this. She is taken aback when she sees a handsome young man, Towns, at the tournament. Beth learns quite a bit about chess at the tournament, such as the purpose of the chess clock, the touch move rule, how to gain an official ranking in the competitive chess world, and the purpose of the notepad. Despite not knowing the tournament formalities, she easily wins all her matches on her first day. Beth is also thrilled as she watches Beltic defeat his opponents. On the second day, she is paired against Towns. He is enrolled at the local university and came in 5th place at the US Open chess tournament in Las Vegas. The match between Beth and Towns is tough, but Towns eventually is forced to resign. After the match, he compliments Beth on her victory.
You really are something.
After returning home, Beth finds the home in disarray. Alma reveals that Alston has essentially abandoned them as he is never returning home. This change could result in Beth being sent back to the orphanage as now they don't have a financial source. Alma offers to lie about the family status to keep Beth, and Beth quickly agrees.
You're a good soul, Beth.
Then, Alma commits to being an actual mother from onwards. On the final day of the tournament, Beth is set to play Beltic in the finals. Beltic taunts Beth by arriving late for the match and fake yawning at her moves. His tactics work as they frustrate Beth, causing her to lose focus. However, she quickly takes a bathroom break. In the bathroom, Beth takes a tranquilizer and envisions their match on the bathroom ceiling. When she returns, she is calm and focused. She eventually forces Beltic to resign from the match. The crowd and Beltic applaud at Beth's victory. Alma reads about Beth's victory in the paper and, more importantly, the prize money, which is $100. Now, their financial status is going to improve. Beth opens a bank account and goes shopping, purchasing chess books, a chess set, and new clothes. After a few days, Alma plans a trip for Beth and herself to Cincinnati so that Beth can play in another tournament.
Hear that there is a tournament in Cincinnati and the first prize is $500.
Alma calculates the expenses of attending the tournament and says that they could profit if Beth finishes at least in 3rd place. Beth and Alma arrive at a hotel in Cincinnati and enjoy luxurious accommodations. Beth's winnings clearly allow them to travel in style. After signing into the tournament, Beth overhears a young man named Benny Watts discussing the Caro-Can defense with other chess players. Watts is the best chess player in the US. Beth approaches the group and Watts notes that he is familiar with her due to her success. Watts reveals that he isn't playing in the tournament, saying that he doesn't want much limelight. The following day, after Beth wins a game, she is surprised to see Alma watching the match. Beth introduces Alma to her newly made friends.
Aren't you going to introduce me to your friends?
And they go to dinner together. Her friends say that Watts has an international title and plays in Europe. Alma is excited to hear that bigger prizes are offered at foreign competitions. They also discuss the fact that the Soviets are the best players in the world and haven't been beaten by an American in decades. In the coming days, Beth wins all her matches one by one and eventually wins the tournament after beating a master. She makes a profit of $300 after expenses. Seeing this, Alma asks Beth if she can receive a 10% commission.
Perhaps you could give me 10%?
But Beth decides to give her 15%, and their bond is also getting stronger now. Jumping ahead, Beth beats a grandmaster at another tournament. Alma proposes that they go to Houston, where a tournament is being played for the holidays. Alma wants to treat the trip as a vacation, not just another work trip. The two bond on the plane flight, and Alma gives Beth a sip of her alcoholic drink. After returning from the trip, Beth is also interviewed for Life magazine. She explains that she views the chessboard as a world that she can control, unlike life. Beth says that if she gets hurt in a game, only she is to blame. But then, the interviewer begins making derogatory comments about Beth, and Alma jumps to her defense. When they finally read the article, Beth is unhappy that it focuses so much on her being a girl. We jump ahead to Las Vegas, 1966 at the US Open. Beth is older and attractive now. As she walks through the hotel, she sees Towns again. He is now a chess journalist. They meet there, and Towns asks her to come to his hotel room for an interview and to play some chess.
I got a camera in my room.
In your room.
They go to his hotel room and he begins photographing. Towns eventually caresses her face, but before anything more happens, Towns' roommate enters the room and breaks up the encounter. When Beth returns to her room, she finds Alma drinking beer. Alma lets Beth join her in drinking. Then, Beth discusses the Las Vegas tournament. She mentions that Watts is there, but she is most unnerved by a Soviet player named Vasily Borgov. The following day, after a chess game with Beth with a player, Watts approaches Beth and formally introduces himself. He says he read about her game with Beltic and points out that Beltic could have beaten her.
I know you could have lost your advantage.
However, Beth doesn't believe him, so he tells her to replay the game, which she is able to do from her memory. Then, Beth realizes Watts is right. She is frustrated that Watts was able to figure this out based only on a write-up of her match. This shakes Beth's confidence. On the next day, Watts and Beth are finally matched up. Beth gets to move first and envisions dozens of opening moves before playing. Although a draw would allow Beth to win the tournament, she desperately wants to beat Watts. She employs a different strategy than she usually uses, but Watts counters her appropriately. Seeing this, she resigns from the game herself, honoring her sportsmanship. Watts also acknowledges that it was a tough game.
Tough game.
After the game, Alma focuses on the prize money, which angers Beth further. So, Beth rudely insults Alma about being too familiar with loss to care. Alma responds that now Beth knows about loss too. The storyline shifts to a college classroom where Beth is learning Russian. A male student invites her over to smoke pot with some of his fellow hippies. She calls Alma, who allows her to stay at the party. Afterward, Beth begins engaging in hard partying and sleeping over at men's homes. Although Alma is concerned, she lets Beth do as she pleases. In a few days, Beth graduates high school and reveals to Alma that she got invited to play chess in Europe later in the year.
They invited me.
In the coming days, they first head to a tournament in Mexico City. There, Beth sees Borgov, meaning he is also playing at the tournament. Beth advances through the tournament. She even prevails against international grandmasters. But Beth is still intimidated by Borgov. Later, Beth faces a young Soviet boy in another match who is very expert in his field. Their match lasts for 5 hours before the boy asks to postpone it to the following day. Beth agrees and has to write down her next move when play resumes so that she can't change tactics during the break. It is apparent that Beth is struggling to win this match and spends a lot of time at night thinking about the strategy. When play resumes the next day, Beth uses tactics to distract her opponent, such as wandering around the playing area after her turn and loudly tapping her toe. Her tactics work. The boy is distracted and loses the match. After she wins, they talk. He tells her his goal is to become a world champion someday. Beth tells the boy that he is the best opponent she's ever faced.
You're the best I've ever played.
The boy mutters that she only thinks that because she's never played Borgov. The following day, Beth is standing in the back of an elevator when Borgov and 2 other Soviets walk in. They are clearly talking about her in Russian, which Beth can understand due to her Russian classes. The Soviets consider her a threat to their chess dominance and have been looking into her. One thinks Borgov should beat her here, or in a future European tournament to crush her spirit. The other thinks he should wait to defeat her until she comes to the Soviet Union, where they will be on their premises, and she will be isolated. Soon, in the tournament, Borgov and Beth are paired up. We learn that Borgov is the master of the Sicilian strategy and hopes to induce Beth into using it with his opening move. We also learn that the player who moves first always has the advantage in chess, and in this match, Borgov has moved first. Beth soon realizes that she has been outplayed. She tries to resist but fails, so she resigns from the game. Beth returns to her hotel room, where she sees Alma lying in bed. Beth immediately recaps the game while changing her clothes. After she finishes talking, Beth realizes Alma is non-responsive. Beth looks closer and realizes Alma is dead. The hotel offers to compensate Beth and help her in any way. It is implied that the alcohol in Alma's hotel room poisoned her after she consumed too much of it.
Whatever we can do to help.
Later that night, Beth calls Alston and tells him of Alma's death. She asks for his help, but he is reluctant to get involved. Alston tells Beth to bury Alma in her family's plot. He also offers to give Beth the house and the mortgage. Alston has no sympathy for Alma or Beth at all. After the death of Alma, Beth is further depressed and indulges in drinking and taking tranquilizers. After a few days, Beth walks into her now empty home, clearly still grieving for Alma. She gets a call and is surprised to hear from Beltic. He heard of her loss to Borgov. He acknowledges that she is better than him in chess, but still,
I know, you're better than me.
He offers his services to train her for her next encounter with Borgov. Hearing this, Beth invites him over that night. Beltic arrives that night, and they discuss Beth's chess game. Beltic studied her game with Watts at the US Open and helped Beth see a different strategy that she could have taken. They also discuss her playing style. Beltic notes that Beth plays on instinct and can be tricked into playing too narrowly when she is angry. The next day, Beltic gives Beth a book on Borgov's life so that she can gain more insight into him. We learn that Borgov was a child prodigy. He believes that a successful chess master must play aggressively and expresses concern about how long he can fend off the next generation. Back to Beth, who finally offers to let Beltic move into her house for free. But after a few days, it's clear that Beth is somewhat turned off by Beltic's constant meekness. She is also unhappy when Beltic confesses that he fixed his teeth and calls her after seeing how attractive she is in the news. One morning, Beth defeats Beltic in a chess match and insults him for not being better. The pair fight at that argument. Soon, Beltic gets frustrated by Beth's cutting personality, and Beth gets frustrated with his timidity. The next morning, Beltic announces that he's moving out to go back to school. Beth tries to convince him to stay, but she fails. He does thank Beth, however, for teaching him he doesn't love chess, at least not as much as he once did. Beltic acknowledges that Beth could be one of the best chess players ever, but he also notes that she reminds him of another American chess master who played boldly and instinctually, but also went crazy and ended up retiring from chess in his early 20s. Then he tells Beth to be careful with the tranquilizers.
Be careful, Beth.
The story jumps to the U.S. Chess Championship in 1967. The championship now takes place at a college campus in Ohio, a far cry from Las Vegas. Beth and Watts meet up there. Beth proudly tells Watts that she will beat him at the tournament this time. Then, we see Beth and Watts easily defeat the competition over the course of the tournament. They will meet in the finals. It's also revealed that Beth is reading a book written by Watts and still taking tranquilizers. Watts also takes a real interest in Beth throughout the tournament, consistently encouraging her. Beth later eavesdrops on an interview Watts is having with a reporter. Like Borgov, Watts says that aggressive and confident play is the key to excellence. He says he can gauge if an opponent has that confidence from their first chess move. After the interview, Watts asks Beth to meet him in the student union that night. At night, Beth arrives at the student union to find Watts playing chess recreationally with some other eliminated players. Watts and another player are debating a certain move, and Watts asks Beth to give her opinion. She does, and Watts says that she made the same move he was advocating. He also says that they both see chess the same way. Watts then convinces Beth to play speed chess with him, with the pair wagering $5 per game. They play at lightning speed, making each move in mere seconds. The public is watching from above, but to the bad luck Beth, she loses every single game, and her frustration starts increasing with each loss. Watts eventually cleans Beth out of all her money. She storms back to her room, where she breaks down in tears. The next day, Beth is relaxing outside when Watts approaches her. He says that she's the best player at the tournament. Beth asks if he's trying to manipulate her out of the tournament, and Watts responds that he doesn't need to do that to beat her. Watts explains he only won last night because he's far more experienced at speed chess.
I'm better at speed chess than you are. I play a lot of it in New York.
When she brings up her loss from years ago, he says it was a long time ago, and she was distracted. But now that she has matured, she should be able to beat him. The finals arrive between Watts and Beth. In their match, Watts gets to play first, which gives him the advantage. But Beth is calm and collected. However, the story jumps to the post-match, with Watts and Beth drinking together at a bar. It's revealed that Beth beat Watts in only 30 moves. Yes, she is the U.S. champion now. Although Watts is unhappy, he praises Beth's growth. Watts explains that as the U.S. champion, she will be asked to play in the Soviet Union, just as he has done as the former U.S. champion. In Moscow, she will be pitted against champions from other countries, and 4 Soviets, including Borgov. Watts continues to press Beth as to how she plans to win. He also begins confronting Beth about her heavy drinking. Beth is surprised at Watts' boldness. Eventually, Watts gets to the point. He says Beth is the only one with the talent to defeat the Soviets in chess, but only if she has a good trainer who is better and more mature than Beltic. Watts has been following Beth's life more closely than she knew. Beth realizes that Watts is offering to be that trainer. He invites her to come live with him in New York, where they can train together. Beth finally admits that she is terrified of Borgov and how he destroyed her. Watts replies that she wasn't ready to beat him back then, but can do it now. She agrees to train with Watts, and he says they will leave for New York in the morning.
You can sleep in my living room and you can leave for Paris from there.
We cut to Beth and Watts driving to New York. They sing songs, play chess matches without a board in their mind, discuss strategy, and brush up on their Russian skills. They arrive at Watts' tiny, dingy apartment. He sets up an air mattress for Beth in the living room and notes that he doesn't have alcohol. Beth's training begins immediately. Watts has them play through Borgov's old games and really study chess strategy. He notes that the Soviets work in teams while Americans work alone. He hopes that their collaboration will raise her game. One night, some of Watts's friends came over. 2 are chess players, including a grandmaster. Another is a Parisian model named Cleo, who used to date Watts. The 2 women bond as Cleo praises Beth's intellect. After some time, Watts proposes that they all should play chess, Beth versus himself and his 2 chess-playing friends at the same time. Beth counters, proposing they will play simultaneous speed chess for $10 per game. And here, the magic happens. She defeats all 3 simultaneously, multiple times. After the others leave, Watts tells Beth that nobody's beaten him that badly in 15 years.
Nobody has done that to me in 15 years.
The story moved to Paris in 1967. Beth arrives at a hotel for her first European tournament, at which Borgov is playing. The press and numerous fans also attend the tournament. During an interview, Beth responds to questions about her glamorous lifestyle. She also surprises Borgov by stating she's reviewed his old games.
Stay in my room and study Mr. Borgov's old game.
In the coming days, Beth stays focused and cuts her way through the tournament. Eventually, she advances to the finals against Borgov. The night before the finals, Cleo asks Beth out for a drink. Beth goes down to meet her at the bar for a single drink. But as expected, one drink turns into many. Beth daydreams of living in France and being like the French girls. There, she also admits to being in love with Towns. We cut to the scene at the beginning of the series as Beth wakes up late for her match. We know that the match is against Borgov. She takes some tranquilizers before rushing downstairs to the match. After reaching there, Beth apologizes, and the match begins. Beth even gets to move first. As the match progresses, Beth grows more agitated and hungover. Beth hesitates and then makes a tentative move. Borgov responds quickly and confidently. A tear streams down Beth's cheek and she resigns. She knows that she has made a mistake due to her hangover, and now, showing her sportsmanship, she accepts the defeat. On the flight back to America, Beth talks to Watts on the phone. She says the outcome wouldn't have been different even if she wasn't hungover. Watts asks her to come back to New York, but Beth chooses to go home. She tells Watts that she is unsure what she wants to do next. Upon return, Beth's lawyer calls and says that Alston refuses to sign the house to her. That's why they arrange a meeting where Beth confronts Alston. However, he refuses to acknowledge his promise concerning the house or even his adoption of Beth. Alston even insults Alma, but Beth defends her. She finally offers to buy the house from Alston for $7,000.
$7,000.
Says she doesn't want this house to get sold. Her offer is accepted. Then, Beth remakes the entire house, removing almost all of the existing decorations and furniture and replacing it with her own. Soon after, a Christian organization contacts Beth and offers to financially support her if she goes to the Soviet Union. She calls Watts, who tells Beth to accept their offer
If you need to play another match before, they'll back you.
and stay focused. She tries to mend his life again but cannot stop herself from drinking heavily. She is so much under the burden of the defeat from Borgov that she spends her whole days from dawn to dusk drinking. It ends only when she passes out and hits her head on a table. She also ignores attempts by Beltic to contact her. One day, Beth arrives hungover and disheveled at a local tournament that she is promoting. There, she meets the first person Beth ever beat in a tournament, another girl. She tells Beth how much of an inspiration she is, but Beth doesn't respond to her very well. Beth then goes outside for a smoke, where Beltic is waiting for her. He says that he works at the local supermarket. He had seen Beth in disarray at the market several times. That's why Beltic expresses concern for her. But Beth doesn't want his concerns anymore, so he wishes her good luck and leaves. The next morning, Beth hears a knock on the door. Assuming it's Beltic again, she angrily answers the door. However, when she opens the door, Beth is surprised to find her old friend Jolene standing there. She has come to meet her childhood friend from the orphanage. Jolene tells Beth that Shable died and that they should go to the funeral together.
Mr. Sharble died. Funeral day after tomorrow, I thought.
We learn that Jolene went to college and is now a paralegal. She hopes to attend law school and become a radical lawyer fighting for civil rights. In Beth's house, Jolene sees the tranquilizers and notes that Beth must now be doing a lot more than taking pills. However, Beth changes the topic and confesses that she's afraid of going to the Soviet Union and admits that all she wants to do is drink. She's also worried that she is crazy, just like her mother. Jolene tells Beth her history doesn't bind her and gives Beth a present, the missing chess book from her childhood. The following day, the pair begin the drive to Shable's funeral. On the way, they stop at the trailer home where Beth lived with her mother, Alice. Alice and Paul were wealthy, but Alice ended up in poverty somehow. Then Beth and Jolene drive by the orphanage they both lived at, but Beth doesn't want to go inside. The pair attend Shable's funeral. where Beth expresses sorrow and mentions she never paid him back his entry fee to her first chess tournament. After the funeral, Beth returns to the orphanage after all. There, she sees the headmistress walking with the help of a cane. She broke her hip and suffered a permanent injury soon after Beth left, but the headmistress doesn't recognize Beth.
You should be in trouble, young lady.
Beth then goes to the basement, where she learns to play chess with Shable. She finds that Shable collected press clippings about her career. Beth takes a picture of the two of them he had kept, and then weeps in Jolene's car. Her emotions have overflowed by remembering all the memories of her past. Jumping forward, Beth is meeting with the Christian group that paid for her to play a tour in San Francisco and is planning to pay her way to the Soviet Union. But in return, they want her to make a pre-written statement to the press praising Christianity. However, Beth refuses to do it and returns their money.
Look, I have no intention of saying anything like this.
She now needs to raise at least $3,000 for the trip to the USSR on her own. Beth calls Watts to ask for more money, but he doesn't have it, as he's gambled his money away. She asks him to at least come with her to the Soviet Union, but he angrily declines because he is still mad that she didn't come back to New York after Paris.
If you don't come back to New York and you basically tell me that you'd rather be a drunk than be with me.
This is a significant loss, as without Watts, Beth will have nobody to help her develop strategy and analyze matches. The Chess Federation also gives Beth a very small sum, because they are angry at her because she's refused to do press. While the State Department won't pay her for the trip, it will send a federal agent to protect Beth on her trip. Jolene finally offers to give Beth the money. Jolene explains that she has also been following Beth's career over the years and considers Beth her family. Beth promises to pay Jolene back once she wins. On her flight to the Soviet Union, the government agent tells Beth to always remain in the hotel and never go out alone. He also tells her to be on the lookout for any messages she may receive from Borgov about the game. Beth and the agent land in Moscow. She settles into her hotel room and waits for her games to start. The tournament begins in a large hall with a huge applause. Beth defeats her first opponent in 27 moves. A commentator recounts that Beth's first opponent likely underestimated Beth because she is a woman and an American. While walking with her bodyguard through the city, Beth sees dozens of Soviets playing chess in a park. She continues to stay sober and advances through the tournament. One day, after she wins her third match, Borgov gets up from his seat to review her board. This shows that Borgov is also now taking Beth seriously. After each victory of Beth, more fans wait to applaud her outside the venue. In a few days, Beth gets paired against Luchenko, the oldest competitor who was a world champion before Beth was born. They play so long that they have to adjourn the match for the night. As she returns to her room, Beth sees Luchenko, Borgov, and another Soviet player strategizing about the adjourned game. With nobody in Moscow to help her, Beth stays up most of the night strategizing. When play resumes, Beth wins. Luchenko smiles at her and they talk candidly. Beth says she studied his work growing up and admires him. Luchenko responds that he reviewed her games at this tournament and that she is possibly the best chess player he has ever faced.
You are a marvel, my dear.
Beth wins another marathon match to set up a final battle with Borgov. That night, Beth lies in her hotel room and stares at her tranquilizers. She recalls her childhood after she and Alice left Paul's house. As they drive, Alice tells Beth to close her eyes and crashes into an oncoming truck. This shows the crash that killed Alice was intentional. Remembering this memory, Beth then flushes all her tranquilizers down the toilet. The final match arrives, Beth versus Borgov. It is aired over the radio, and Beth gets to move first. She opens with the Queen's Gambit strategy. The commentators note that Borgov is playing a different style than typical. Outside, the crowd follows along by moving the pieces on their own chessboard. After a while, Borgov surprisingly asks to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Beth knows that he will spend the night with his friends, developing a strategy to beat her. On the other hand, Beth is answering the various questions of the press. There, she credits Shable for teaching her chess, though he was a janitor at her orphanage. As she leaves, she is shocked to find Towns there. He goes to her room where both apologize for their past mistakes. Now they agree to be friends again. Towns then asks how he can help her beat Borgov. At this, she confides that she thinks she needs the pills and booze to win and that she can't visualize the game without them. Towns gets her to admit that she has been doing fine without them and helps her fall asleep. When Beth awakens, fully rested, she finds Towns has been busy. He has coffee for Beth, her game with Borgov recreated, and people waiting to talk to her on the phone. When Beth answers the phone, she is delighted to hear Watts at the other end. The New York Times has been covering the match, so Watts gathered a support team to follow her progress and help advise her as needed. The team includes Beltic, her registrar friends, and the other two players Beth beat at speed chess while living with Watts. The group helps Beth prepare for the resumption of play. Meanwhile, a commentator notes that the longer the match continues, the more Borgov's advantage will grow, as his strength is the endgame versus Beth's strength as an opener. As they play, Borgov makes unexpected moves that Beth and her friends did not discuss in their planning discussions. Now Beth must improvise somehow to win. She takes a deep breath and looks up to the ceiling, where she is able to envision the board without the tranquilizers this time. She foresees all the consequences of her moves and then plays her moves one by one. She causes Borgov to begin retreating. Seeing this, Borgov offers her a draw, the first time he has ever made such an offer to someone. If Beth accepts, she will have forced a tie with the world champion. But if she doesn't, she will need to overcome Borgov's endgame and risk another crushing loss. Still, Beth declines the draw, and they play on because she is renowned for her winning nature and not settling for less. After a few more moves, Borgov eventually accepts the defeat and resigns from the game, picking up his king and handing it to Beth. He then embraces Beth as the crowd applauds. Back in America, Watts and the rest of the support team wildly celebrate Beth's victory. When Jolene hears the news, she also gives a contented smile. Beth is the world champion now. The following day, Beth and the agent drive towards the airport to board a plane back to the USA. During the drive, the agent tells Beth that she will be meeting the president and some Russian officials in the coming days because they want to congratulate her on her victory.
There's a dinner tonight after the reception at the Russian chess club in Georgetown.
He is excited that Beth beat the Soviets at their own game and values her only as an anti-communist marketing tool. However, Beth suddenly gets out of the car to walk the rest of the way by herself in peace. As she walks through the park filled with chess players, they stand and applaud her. One player invites her to sit and play. She accepts the offer, and the story ends with Beth saying, "Let's play."
Сыграем.